Am I turned on?
How are you?
Am I on mute?
No, can you hear me?
Am I on mute?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can.
Yep.
I think I had my speaker shut off. Oh, well.
How have you been?
Hmm?
Good, good.
I got my first shot this weekend.
Which one did you get?
Pfizer.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you. I went over to the VA pop-up over at Lynn at Breed School.
Jeff, you're a veteran?
Yeah. And
Yeah, me too. That's right. I got mine over at the Bedford Medical Center at the VA.
in Bedford.
Yeah.
Edith North.
Pardon me?
That's the Edith North, right?
Yes.
The Edith. Yeah, that's where I got my hearing aids.
Hey, have you ever considered joining the Legion?
I don't know.
Okay.
That would involve actually making a commitment.
No, there's no commitment.
No,
No.
I don't know.
The only commitment actually is money.
Occasionally.
Yeah.
You know, but I always find myself doing something. I don't know what. Going out to dinner with the wife, going to visit the grandkids, going on a road trip up the coast of Maine. I don't know.
All good things.
Yeah, we were just talking about it that, another month and maybe we'll be able to take a trip up to York. And you ever been to the York Inn?
No.
Oh, if you ever get up there, they got this little restaurant that's got the greatest hamburger on the face of the earth. Good place to stop in, get a burger and fries, and go off the diet for a while and have fun.
I remember that, the York Inn.
Yeah, it's good. We go out for these road hunting trips just to get out and get the fresh smell of air.
Sure.
What branch were you in, Dana?
Air Force.
Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. My friend Kenny Gavin was in the Air Force.
And you? Which branch were you in?
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
Yeah, in fact, I was just driving around Nahant today, and I noticed a buoy tender off the coast of Nahant. They were tending buoys.
Oh, nice.
I tried to stand up and send some semaphore, but I guess none of them use semaphore flags anymore. So I moved on.
Where did you go when you're in the Coast Guard?
Basically, a bunch of different places, but two ships. I started out on the Coast Guard cutter Hamilton, which was good. But then they asked for volunteers to go overseas to Nam, and so I changed over to the bib.
Yeah.
And it was my older brother Dana was in the Coast Guard before me, and he was on the Androscoggin, and he went over to Vietnam, and the bib was going to be sent over there to relieve his ship. So I said, hey, that'd be kind of cool. I could meet up with him in the Philippines and, have a little fun, which we did. But we still can't talk about it to this day, but we had fun. And that was cool.
Very good.
And then we came back and just a bunch of what Coast Guard does, go out and do ocean stations and got a chance to spend New Year's Eve in St. John's, Newfoundland one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I can't say I had a bad experience because I enjoyed the Coast Guard, but military life is it's for a certain personality, and I don't think I have that personality. So
Yeah, it takes something like that. I was mainly a traditional guardsman, so I was doing reserve duty for most of my time, but I did spend a few years active duty.
yeah,
And I know what you mean. So
I wouldn't change anything, but it was a good 4 years. was like a high school after a high school. Oh, I think you've got an audience looking for you.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Dana. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Julie.
Very good.
How is everybody?
Good.
Good.
I got to step out for a second. I'll be right back.
Sure. Yep.
I
Jeff,
can't
did you
go
get
anywhere.
an appointment for your shot, or have you gotten your first shot?
I did. I was just telling Dana, they had a pop-up clinic in Lynn at the breed school. And
Oh, I saw that.
yeah, so I said, well, gee, I'll give it a shot. Called
Good.
up John Lazar. John Lazar connected me to the appropriate people, and it was very efficient and
Good.
a lot of people.
Good. Yeah, I went yesterday over to the tech.
Yeah, my wife got hers yesterday at the tech at about 4:15.
Oh, okay.
Bumped into Carl Macario over there and
Yeah, and
shot
he
the
was
breeze for a
directing
while.
traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad it's opened up. My husband has his for tomorrow at 6:30
At the tech.
at the tech. Yeah.
Yeah. I was hoping I was going to bump into my cousins, one of my two cousins over there, but neither one of them were there.
No.
But Mary Smith is a nurse at
Oh, yeah.
the Voc Tech school, and her sister Marty I think she's retired now, but she's also a nurse.
Okay.
Marty Taylor.
I had Nancy Cantelmo gave me mine.
Oh,
You know
okay.
Nancy?
I've heard the name, but
Yeah,
you know.
she's the board president for the Historical Society.
Oh,
She's
okay.
also active with swim, so you may have heard her name. She's
I've heard-
spoken to the
That's
FinCom.
probably what it was tied to.
Yeah.
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 You ever notice how many nurses there are in this town? God, we must have a dominant force in the medical community.
We're very fortunate.
It's
Very
funny.
fortunate.
My grandmother was the town nurse, the school nurse.
Yes,
That was way back when.
I just saw her name this morning as I was going through town reports.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I've been trying to get some information for Dan Coughlin on where the railroad tracks, where the trolley tracks are, Zach.
I know, I owe you information on that.
Yeah, I mean, are they still there? I don't know.
From the excavations that I've done down there, we haven't seen them.
Right. And it said that the tracks were supposed to be auctioned off with everything else. So I'm thinking somebody would have run into them somewhere along the line.
Right, we've had a few breaks down there where we've done some excavations and we haven't seen them. And I've
Yeah.
talked to some people that have been there for a while and they haven't seen them either. So I imagine they were removed before their time, or at least most of them anyway.
Yeah, well, I assume that since they weren't set in cobblestone like they were in other cities, because I know some of Lynn's are still there.
Mhm.
But I don't think ours are. So I sent what information I had to Dan Coughlin, so hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of a homecoming tonight, Zach. I'm a long lost cousin.
Yeah. Yeah. When I heard the name Lewis, I made
Nice
sure
to meet you
that one
finally.
out. Yeah.
I think I may have met you when you were just a wee lad. I think we were over Bud and Madeline's one summer at a get together, and you might have been running around in the backyard with all the other cousins.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, so you remember my grandmother Alma?
Yeah, my aunt.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I the only one on the call that's not related to someone else?
Well, I don't think I'm related to any of these folks. But then you never know.
That you know of.
But
Yeah,
we did
that I
go to
know
school
of.
together.
I'm related to a lot of folks in Nahant. If you know the Cadigans or the Murphys or the Coffees, they're all first cousins.
See that, Allison? I just met Zach for the first time. Oh,
Well,
is Allison
not
on?
really.
Oh, there she is.
It happens.
So I spoke with Tony about an hour ago and should be on the call, so.
Okay,
um,
good.
appreciate you guys taking the time to go through the budget again.
An interesting way you said again there.
Again.
It's funny, that's what my life was all about, budgets.
Yeah.
But I still have to remember debit is on the left, right, Allison? That side of the T account.
When I took my first job in Boston several decades ago, they asked me if there was anything I did not want to do. And I said, anything to do with numbers. I don't want to work with numbers. So within 6 weeks, they gave me the sales book. Then after that, they gave me the general ledger. I said, what are you, crazy?
You can't get away from numbers. It's part of everything.
I know. I tried though. I tried.
Well, being
It was
married to a teacher who's a math teacher, it's kind of hard to get away from him. You know, she calls it the math curse.
Math curse. Now everything in my life has to balance though. It makes it difficult.
Oh my gosh, Barbara just sent me a message. She wants the link.
We have time.
Off it goes.
Hey there.
Hi, Judy.
Once you get the notion of double entry bookkeeping in your head, it's hard to lose that.
Yep.
You know,
If you put it one place, it's got to go someplace else.
right.
I think that the thing that pieced it all together was a book at Bentley. My teacher wrote it called The Strategy of Cash.
Oh.
And I just never forgot that book. Loved it. Made a
Huh.
career out of it.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check this out. My
Goes back
father,
a ways. It's a 1980s variety book, but
Strategy of Cash. Okay.
mm,
My father was an accountant, and he had a picture of this, like 14th century friar on his desk. Nikolai Pacioli, I think was his name. He invented double entry bookkeeping.
Ah,
So
thanks for the lesson. Nikolai Pacioli.
Cash is king, Jeff.
Oh my God.
all right, it sounds like we are creating a quorum.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Strategy of Cash, Jeff? Was that it?
yes, by S.D. Slater, Slater.
No, it's not on Amazon.
It's probably out of print, but it was the textbook and he wrote it, and I thought it was pretty good. Everything fell together.
Okay, well, speaking of math and double entry bookkeeping, I need to count on my fingers how many FinComers we have here tonight. Do we have a quorum? Jeff, Bob, Julie, Dana, Judy, 5, DeWitt, 6, Barbara, that's definitely, and John is here. That's not only a quorum, I think it's unanimous.
Sorry, guys.
All right, so let's see, it is 7:04. We have a quorum. Present from the Finance Committee, Jeff Lewis, Bob Vanderslice, Julie Tarmy, Dana Sheehan, Judy Zahora, DeWitt Brown, Barbara Beatty, and John Fulgham, and joined by a number of guests from the public and Zach Taylor, who is our DPW head. And DPW is the only department on, oh, and Tony, I forgot about Tony. He just shows up as town hall. So the town hall is here.
I'm representing the building.
There you go. And
And a fine building it is.
it is a fine
And
building.
Allison's on here too.
And Allison is on here too, yes. Where did Allison go? There you are.
Here I am.
Hi. All right, Jeff, you're the liaison, so I think I'm just gonna throw this to you.
Okay, well, we met on, what was it, Friday, Zach, or
Well,
what day did?
I was
maybe it was-
dealing with a sewer break and Tony covered for me. So I believe it was it
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday.
Was it Thursday? Yeah, time flies when you're having fun. And I think we covered a lot. And, you know, Tony came up with, I would call it something that I think is a good idea going forward. Let me see if I did some ratios to, regarding our, I'm having a brain fart here.
You looked at our enterprise,
The enterprise
Rates.
funds,
our
And-
enterprise rates and our tax rates compared to other communities.
and we are high when it comes to our enterprise funds. But there's nothing that caps our ability to be high in our enterprise funds. And Tony came up with the idea of going into a multi-rate, which would take care of my needs regarding getting additional cash from some of the larger users in the water and sewer. Tony, if you want to explain where that was going, you did some
Sure.
conversations with other town managers.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't create the idea on my own. If you take a look at, the MWRA reports, you'll see that many communities, have a tiered rate structure for their water rates and sewer rates. They also have, some of them have a quarterly charge or biannual charge, and then plus a tiered rate structure on top of that. So the idea there is, the more water you use, the more impact you have on the water and sewer system, and therefore potentially pay an increased per 100 cubic foot unit charge. We don't have a ton of large users in town, but I think you have a lot of pretty much everybody at the same, and then you have a couple that are like vastly higher than the rest. And so that's an idea of like something that we talked about the other day that we could consider. I think that, it's not something that's voted on at town meeting. That's more on the revenue side.
Right.
And it's something that, I think that, what we sometimes tend to do is, we meet so often leading up to town meeting, and then we kind of stop talking a little, over the summer and in the fall until it's time to get into the next town meeting prep. And Jeff and I talked about, staying connected after town meeting to maybe look at a couple revenue sided discussion points, which are, the rate structures for water, sewer, trash, and then also we even quickly discussed our fee schedule too. So
Bob, if you look at the big picture, I looked at our two largest revenue streams. They are property tax and the enterprise funds. If you combine them together, we look terrific. We're in good shape. We're very low property tax rates compared to the other 351 towns in Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But we're high on water and sewer. Question is, how do we get there? Last town meeting, I brought up this $800,000 debt shift that ends up, it's a cost that should belong in the enterprise fund, but the law, mass law allows the transfer of that debt service over to the general side. which we do as in a journal entry, I guess, in the town hall each year. Even with that shift, we're very low on the tax scale. If we try to shift it to the enterprise fund, it doesn't make sense because it shifts our tax size down even lower. And I think we have to leave well enough alone at this stage of the game. It's nothing more than a math exercise. Whose budget does it sit in? But the cost, we're trying to shift from the low users to the high users. Let me know if I'm rambling and I'm not making sense. That was basically, I was trying to create another enterprise fund, which doesn't make sense at this stage of the game, which is the stormwater management funds. So on an interim basis, Tony's idea of shifting the rate structure so that not the majority, but some of the costs get shifted to the higher users is something we could do on an interim basis. And I'll open it up for questions if I'm not explaining it properly. As far as dollars go, there's nothing wrong with the budget. It's a good budget. I just think that there's, I'm always pushing for more stabilization funds. I'm like a broken record. And I don't think that we have enough revenue in there, but I don't know how to get that revenue without putting us where all of a sudden we're over the top. That's it in a nutshell. Do I have my mic on?
No, you do.
Jeff, this is Dana. Question, do the fees, the water and sewer fees, cover the entire cost of the program?
No.
What's the difference?
The
Capital.
budget, the way it's laid out is departmental, as what you would expect in a budget. But if you add them all together, the cost of water, sewer, and the enterprises is about I think I've got 2,748,000. That's before you adjustments that you just gave us, Tony. And what we've got covering it is about 1,988,000 from the sources and uses. So you're short about $760,000 under, not covered. And from an estimation point of view, that's about the amount of the debt service shift, Zach?
Yep.
I'm sorry, yeah. Who should I address that to, Zachary or to Tony?
Well, both of us can speak on it, Tony. If you can, deal with the nuts and bolts of the money. And I'll just get into detail on if there's any questions on how the money's being spent and that type of thing.
The difference, Dana, is shifted to the general. What happens is they go through this calculation, which I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts on it, of exclusions and additions, and it comes up with 2.5% of adjusted assessed value. You can only take Prop 2.5 up by 2.5%, and they set the tax rate. And then on top of that, they take this $700,000 or $800,000 debt shift and say, well, let's not fund that from here. We'll just move it over to here. So when they do the calculation, they do it on $800,000 more, send out the taxes to the taxpayers, and everybody pays their tax bills. So that $800,000 gets paid in property taxes and is not covered by the fees that we send out to the users.
And so are we proposing to raise the water and sewer fees to try to close that gap and put it on the high users?
Well, I guess the question is, how do you do that without, if you take that and take it off of property taxes and put it onto water and sewer, then you raise your revenue requirements for the ratepayers. But now you put pressure on the general fund. and this is something that's sort of been built into, I don't know, it's like there's an extra $800,000 worth of revenue. If you just ripped it out of the general fund, I'm not sure how the town would react. Tony, that's a question for you.
I'm not suggesting that we shift it back because our water sewer rates are so high, as they are. And, but the way that they're set up now is it's just one rate, for all users, right? So in a sense, that's an aggressive way of doing it. So by taking the amount that those rates support or fund, and instead of dividing it up evenly to all users, having it tiered so that larger users pay a higher rate, because they are, obviously have a larger impact on the overall system. You're still bringing in the same total dollar amount, but how it's distributed may be, viewed a little bit more equitably than it is now.
Right, but just to be clear, we're talking about two very different things. One, I guess, which is what Jeff raised, is this debt shift where water and sewer debt service is paid out of the general fund, paid through real estate taxes. That's kind of discussion number one. And discussion number two, which is what Tony's bringing up, is there a better way to structure water and sewer rates, kind of regardless of whether what you do about the debt shift?
Isn't this done because of making the taxes, getting the revenues from the taxes, making the taxes deductible, a more efficient tax structure? I thought that was the reason that it was sort of done that way.
That was the genesis of it, yeah.
Yes,
But
okay.
that law changed.
But the
Yeah,
law
but
changed, yes.
The tax laws changed and it's not as beneficial as it once
As
was.
it was 3 years ago or 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Yes.
May I ask a question? So I'm new. When you say our water and sewer rates are high, what do you mean by that? Do you mean they're relatively high compared to other towns? Do you mean, and
Yeah,
if so, why? Or do you just
Um,
mean they're,
Jeff can-
what are they high compared to?
Jeff, you sent an email with some rankings. You compared us to the rest of the county, I believe.
Yes.
And we were in what, the top 10 or on our
Yeah,
water
we
sewer rate?
were, there was only 6 towns that were more expensive than us in the MWRA's system. And the only comparison, Barbara, was the MWRA. I
Mhm.
guess the 60-member towns, and each year they add up a bunch of data, and then they rank and they say, well, all right, well, this is how much they charge for water, this is how much they charge for sewer. They add the two of them together and they say, oh, well, this is the retail amount of cost that the general end user spends, and then they put them in a ranking. And Nahant, little Nahant is right up there. We're in the 7th from the top.
Do you know why?
Well, we're a hybrid. Are you aware of that?
No, see, that's why I'm asking. I'm a newbie. That's why I'm asking this question. I don't understand.
I don't have all of the answers, but we're in the MWRA for getting our water,
I knew that, yes.
but we're in the LWRA when it comes to our sewer.
Oh, what is that?
Lynn Water Sewer
Okay,
treatment plant.
got it.
And each one has different cost structures. And I don't know how long the original contract is, but we're at that cusp. We're about coming into a brand new contract
With Lynn,
with Lynn. Yeah.
right, that
And
I knew. Yeah,
what that impact is going to be going forward is a big unknown.
Right.
We've got some
Well,
rough numbers.
we know Lynn Water Sewers advised us that, we're looking at anywhere from 25% to 45% increase in our rates.
Right, big, yeah.
So
But
that,
so
so
why
if you
are we
include,
high? Why are we so high generally?
So the way,
yeah, go ahead, Allison.
I was just going to talk about the way that the rates are calculated. So a big portion of it is the MWRA and the water and sewer assessment. That's probably the largest piece. But then there's also a calculation of the personnel costs and the operating costs for both the water and sewer enterprises. We factor in some capital costs, excluding the debt shift. So there's smaller capital needs, such as vehicles and stuff of that nature. And then there's also an indirect cost that we calculate. That's a percentage of like the accounting personnel in town and clerical. We assign a percentage of that to the water and sewer enterprise. And then all of that taken together on the expense side, and we calculate based on an estimated usage amount. So, we don't know what our usage is going to be in the upcoming year. So it's kind of, a little bit of a guess based on historical practice, but that's kind of how it all ties into the calculation of the rate.
But I still don't understand how, as a small us, how it is that we rank so high compared to other towns. Is it just a bookkeeping?
How about
It
if
could
I,
be a number
if I,
of things.
yeah, I was just gonna
It could be
say,
a number of things.
Such as?
So, other communities could have cheap treatment assessments. They could have less of their personnel or capital costs in their enterprise account. Some communities, actually, Allison, I'm sure you could speak to this, like Marblehead, a lot of their major capital needs, they do, they go for general overrides a lot of the time for those costs, where we bake that stuff into our rates or our taxes, our general fund. So it could be a number of different things. So on the other side, though, the funding source of our general fund is mainly property taxes. We have one of the lowest tax rates in the area. However, our tax bill is about average because our property values are so high.
Mhm.
So, that's where, when we were discussing, shifting from one to the other, if you shift that that debt shift back to the enterprise with the knowledge that sewer is going to go up 25 to 50% anyways, just because of what's going on over at Lynn Water Sewer and the change in that whole contract and upgrades going on at that facility, you'd have an extremely high sewer bill, extremely high sewer rate. Plus we have a ton of infrastructure needs on our own coming down the line too. So, that's why we kind of talked about, instead of doing that, if part of that goal is to capture some of the larger users in town who may be avoiding those costs with the shift, you could do a tiered rate structure.
Hey, Tony, going back to Lynn Water and Sewer, I guess the contract coming up was mentioned on this meeting, but is that something that we can switch from Lynn to MWRA for sewer to get a better rate?
We explored it. It wasn't financially beneficial to us, and it was borderline not feasible because we would have to connect into Revere's. We basically keep going down the Linway, somehow get across the Saugus River,
Right.
and have to combine into Revere's main in order to access MWRA.
I get it. Some kind of physical connection that would be, make it prohibitive to do. Like,
Yeah, I
But
remember
we
you
did look
explaining
at it.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
We did look at it though. We explored it. It just didn't make sense for us.
Right, like we
A
have
lot
to
of
go
the-
across the bay.
We looked at
Probably.
that too.
Yeah,
Believe it
you
or
said
not.
you did.
Yeah. But the sewer, so there's two, just to be clear, there's two contracts that are coming up related to Lynn Water Sewer. One is the operating and maintenance contract that the commission holds with a company to run the treatment plant. And two is the agreement of all the communities with Lynn Water Sewer Commission. One of the biggest contributing factors to the rates going up is the O&M contract that's coming up. So it was a 30-year contract. When they're looking for the best potential bids for the next company to run the plant, they're trying to make sure that the facility is in its best condition possible. Make sure that the old O&M contractor, returns the facility to Lynn Water Sewer Commission in a state that's meets, similar to the way they got it 30 years ago, but obviously improved. So some of that's major capital upgrades in order to receive the best potential O&M bid under this next process. So those major capital upgrades, the cost of those get divvied up amongst all the communities. So that's part of it. And we're in communications with Saugus and Swampscott and Lynn about, every step of the way. So the biggest piece of it that impacted Nahant was Gorelick Farms. So Gorelick Farms is by far the biggest user amongst all four communities. So when they shut down, Lynn's portion of the piece of the pie shrunk and everybody else's grew. And that's somewhat with the MWRA, where we're actually faring very well with only a 4.2% increase, where many other communities are in the double digits, because Boston's usage has decreased significantly due to COVID. So their piece of the pie is shrunk while everyone else's is growing.
Barbara, if you don't, please bear with me and tell me to shut up if I go too deep. $4.7 million is what we spend on water and sewer. And we're going to take arbitrarily, you and I, Barbara, we're going to say 50% we're going to pay for with property taxes and 50% we're going to pay for with fees. And everything's good. And you go on for a few years and everybody's happy this way. But then you say, you know what? I think we're charging too much to water and sewer. So let's not put half of it in water sewer. Let's put more onto the property tax side. The problem with doing that is that property tax is governed by Prop 2.5.
Right.
So if you arbitrarily shift something from one source of revenue to another source of revenue, there's ramifications.
Yeah.
And one of them is you bump into this Prop 2.5, which starts stealing from the schools, the police, you name it. So the dilemma, if is a good a word as any, is how do we get the right number of revenues so that we can fix this thing without creating a problem that doesn't exist right now.
Right.
And
And to make,
that's,
to make the dilemma even more interesting, if you suddenly have a very large water and sewer capital project,
yeah,
that kind of
Yeah, it
has a
is.
similar effect, because the way it is now, that's going to all be on the general fund, all in the real estate tax rates.
in a perfect world, the enterprise funds are supposed to let's take this problem of skyrocketing costs of water and sewer. Let's get it over here so that we can manage it one way. And then we can keep our core town services of police, schools, library, and that sort of stuff. And we'll control that using the 2.5 engine. So to change something midstream just introduces a variable that I haven't figured out how to fix it yet. Tony came up with a great suggestion of, well, let's muck around with this multi-rate system. I'll do some more research over the summer after we get by this town meeting, and we'll see if we can't do something to get the big users, because and that may end up having the desired effect of getting the average homeowner, the water and sewer will go up, but a larger user is going to pick up a larger piece of it.
Similar
Who are
idea
the-
to what we
who are
just
the
did with-
larger users?
Similar idea to what we just did with trash. You know, we had
Well, I was
one,
just going to say, that was a great move from my point of view in trash. It was, I looked at it, I said, well, what a unique solution that was. I like it. Of course, if I had a multifamily home, I might not like it. But, it shifted. And the big one is Northeastern, probably the largest, I'm guessing. And if they do go through with this expansion, just going back to your analysis, Bob, if they're going to be more than doubling the use of toilets and waters and stuff like that, they're going to be a humongous user of water and sewer, and they're driving the cost up. So
And-
yeah,
and
the
the-
end
yeah.
result is they're going to end up picking up a larger piece of the pie.
And the other nuance is the way it is right now, they're not
No, we're
paying
going
for
to
the
be
capital cost.
subsidizing it the way it is right now.
We are subsidizing the capital portion of their water and sewer usage.
Yeah. So, anybody?
Jeff, Tony,
Yes.
wouldn't it, this is just an intellectual episode thing, and I don't think it's feasible because of the Prop 2.5. Wouldn't it be purer and more reflective in better accounting books if the property tax was in this silo and the sewer and their enterprises were in another silo, rather than shifting back and forth? But I understand from the 2.5 that you really can't do that in one fell swoop. Am I
Right.
correct?
But
Correct.
well, DeWitt, you're absolutely right. In like 99.99998% of the rest of the world, it's done the way you described.
That would be better, I think, but that's okay.
well,
Thank you. Yeah.
you'd still be looking at a 25 to 45% increase in your sewer rate, then add on the $8 million of debt, to take your tax rate and lower it a little bit, but your bill is still average, almost average because your property value is high. So, I mean, it's all coming out of the same wallet at
Right.
the end of the day, except for folks who
The
are
taxes
exempt
changed 2
from,
years ago.
except for folks who are exempt from property taxes, obviously. But, the concept of it is the larger impact you have on the system, the more you contribute to the cost of the system. So,
Is
no
there-
matter
is there
who
s-
it is.
Is there specific guidance with respect to how you can build that tiered structure, or are you pretty open to designing it how you want?
We're still in the early stages of looking into it, John. So I assume there is some guidance there out there that we can grab from other communities or from the MWRA or from Division of Local Services.
Yeah, Tony, I think we need some data on that, and I'm sure you're aware of that.
I'd
And
like to,
also, we talk about big users. If we phase it in, it won't be such shock and awe to enterprises around town so that they
Talking over
they
is
can
fine.
plan for these increases.
Yeah,
I think the idea that Tony came up with of doing some research, I volunteer my time, but I don't know how much time I'm going to have available between now and May. Um,
yeah, and
Subsequent to
it's
that,
not
I'll,
something that we vote on at town meeting, so we figured let's reconvene the conversation after town meeting. Um,
I mean, that's where we are, Bob.
I
John,
have
that-
one more,
everybody.
I have one more question.
Hmm.
Maybe it's because we live down near, there's often some problem down by the, whatever the thing is, down and near the wharf.
the sub,
So
the pump station down
the
there.
pump station there. So, and because we live fairly near there, I'm constantly seeing the trucks there. So do we have, older pipes? Do we have pipes that are not in great shape? I mean, that are also part of the problem?
Yes.
I thought so. Okay.
That's the big, the elephant in the room that's coming down
That's
the
our
street.
biggest, yeah, that's our biggest issue.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking, but I
How big
wanted
is
to
that
hear.
elephant,
Yeah.
Tony?
That
That,
elephant,
that thing you're looking at, Barbara, is a pump station. So that's one of 11 pump stations in town. That's one of the larger ones.
And that's why there's always trucks having problems.
Yeah,
Has problems.
it's more of a maintenance thing. It's basically a pump it pumps all the sewer from, the northeast side of town. It pumps it all the way down Willow Road to Kelly Greens. So if you can imagine, all that sewage enters a vault, and then it's pumped via one or two pumps, depending on what type of flows we need, all the way through a 10-inch pipe to Kelly Green. So it's a maintenance thing. It's constantly getting clogged. There's issues. There's a lot of technical parts down underground there that need to be taken care of. So
I'm correct of seeing that is part of the problem.
yes,
part of, it's not our biggest, but it's up there.
Thank you.
Um,
Big
That was
is the
helpful. Thank
elephant,
you.
Lucy?
What's that, do it?
How big is the Lucy elephant coming down the pike?
I mean, the project from the Linway, from the Rotary along the Linway to Linwater Sewer is gonna be somewhere around $6-7 million. From the Rotary back to Little Nahant, which is, somewhere in the next 5 to 10 years, that's probably another $8 or so million. The Willow Road from Wharf to Kelly Greens is somewhere around $3 million.
15.
And then you have, a couple $1 million that could be spent at the Ward Road pump station itself. And you have, like Zach said, 10 other pump stations around town. So, you're talking about a $20 million
That's what I
thing,
thought.
but I mean, some of
Of
it
which
is
we've already borrowed 4 million, right? Or some number. We've
eight,
already borrowed 8 million.
8.6. So we're working on replacing the Linway, which, some of these problems, when you rank all these, capital needs, you have like the most critical, which is the Linway issue. When, any break between the Ward Road pump station and Linwater sewer is big money issue. And that's what we're trying to solve first. So we did a feasibility study. We did an investigation on the condition of the existing pipe, discovered that from the Rotary to Linwater sewer is the most critical. So, that job's going to be hopefully completed by the end of 2021. And then we should have a little bit of extra money there that we're going to use to make upgrades to the Ward Road pump station, and potentially start designing or permitting Willow Road. So Zach's on the screen. I don't want to conduct your meeting, Mr. Chairman, but Zach can go. I know him and I prepped a little bit on, explaining how his budget works and his capital needs. I don't know if you want him to go through that.
Yeah, I was gonna try the same segue actually, which is, I think we all understand what the big picture looks like, meaning the next, 3 to 10 years, something like that. But let's talk about this year.
Okay. So how do you want to do this? Do you want me to just go from the top and go right through my budget? And I mean, obviously a lot of the items are self-explanatory, but I can go right through and
Yeah, I think that seems to work pretty well. I
Okay.
can probably bring it up on the screen if you give me a second. So if you want to start while I'm working on that.
yeah, so just preface the whole thing with some of this budget it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly some of these items, especially with the water sewer, as well as storm damage and stuff like that. It's very unknown. So this is kind of our best estimate of what we spend on a day-to-day basis for day-to-day activities. So I'll start at the top. I mean, the first, and it's broken up into departments. So a lot of towns have different departments, highways and streets, beaches and parks, water sewer department. It's really just all the DPW, and it's just broken into different parts as you see in the budget. So the first item is admin overhead, department head salary.
All right, hold on a second. Bob, you don't have anything up?
No, I'm still
Oh, okay, I'm
trying
sorry.
to
Thank
find
you.
it.
Go ahead, Zach, I'm sorry.
It will appear like magic.
Yeah,
as soon
maybe
as I-
it'd be better to wait for that to come up so everyone's looking at the same thing.
Okay, now I have to figure out how to do
Zach's
this in
comment-
Zoom.
Zach's comment for the new members, is a good one, because unlike, the school or treasurer, unlike certain, counts on aging, library, different types of departments like that, where it's pretty relatively close to assuming how much your expenses are going to be in the upcoming year. Zach's budget, a lot of his costs are unknown throughout the year. And if he were to budget for, worst case scenario, it would be absurdly high. So he doesn't know how much storm damage we're going to get hit with. He doesn't know how many water breaks or sewer breaks we're going to get in a given year. So his budget is a little bit tougher to predict. And this is his second budget since coming on board, and I think he's really starting to get a feel for how his budget works. So looks like it's up now. I can see it.
All right, so I'll just go through. So admin overhead. Tony and I noticed in the past that there were actually two items in the budget, one for administration, one for overhead. So we basically combined the two into one item, the admin overhead item. So department head salary, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's a piece of my salary. So what you'll see is my salary, as well as all the full-time employees in the DPW, is broken up into different departments. So this is the first portion of my salary is placed into the admin overhead. You also see it in highways and streets, water sewer, and I believe a few other sections, but we'll go through that when we get to it.
Okay. So all of the salaries and wages are allocated across those three categories.
Yes.
Okay. Based on hours, based on.
Yes, based on hours for the different types of activities. So it's really just it's not only three, it's probably 5 or 6 different pots that they're getting paid from. based on activities. Again, we don't have separate departments per se. I mean, I do have different guys assigned to different types of work. And that's why you'll see both my salary as well as their salaries divvied up into these different items. Purchase services, again, you'll see in 2020, actual expenses was 0 because of that second item, the overhead item, which you'll see down below, which we eliminated, and that just got moved into admin. And I don't know how much detail you want to get into this, but with that, you're talking, large scale plans, scanning expenses for plans, radios, first aid, cleaning, technical repairs, and stuff like that at both the DPW facility as well as other public facilities. See, uniform allowance. So each member of the union, as well as myself, receives a $950 per year uniform allowance. Supplies, same type of thing. It goes hand in hand with the services. Let's get into, I mean, office supplies for both me, the staff, my office staff, my admin staff, uniforms for some of the part-time and summer employees, materials for public buildings, maintenance and repair, as well as daily operational needs at the DPW facility, town hall, and other public facilities. So dues and membership, that's self-explanatory, where we are members of different water and sewer clubs, etc. So that covers those costs. Electrical services would be electrical bills for both the DPW facility as well as other public facilities in town. And then this capital item is basically, a lot of it's going to go into capital needs that are at the DPW facility itself, as well as other, the DPW not only has the main facility, but we also have other satellite buildings around town. So we're really just going to put that money into the building structures and try to keep them up. Any questions on the admin portion of the budget?
I don't know whether you've got it combined, Zach, but the numbers I came up with for the general fund was a 0.15% increase over last year. Does that correlate with yours? I sort of undid all, you broke it up into a bunch of different pieces. I went and added it all back together again to see if I couldn't look at how much the spending was going up.
Okay, yep. Yeah, I hadn't done that math. Tony, can you confirm that, or?
Not off the top of my head, but I mean, I know that your budget, didn't see a lot of increases. Obviously, there's some minimum wage increases for part-time salaries. There's the 3% for the unions. So there's personnel increases, but as far as like expenses goes, I mean, I think that we included maybe a little additional money for like MS4 permitting, as you had pointed out to me earlier, Zach.
Yeah, that was in the highways and streets. If you look in purchase of services in highways and streets, so the state and the federal government has now added some stormwater regs that require annual reporting. It's pretty intensive, so it's something that you really need to hire professional engineer. So it's a 3-year thing, and we have a professional engineer doing the work for us. So that's in that $40,000 purchase of services items, not even highways and streets. But like you said, other than that, I was pretty happy or I'm pretty happy right now with how the budget's shaking out this year. So again, we didn't see a huge need to increase any expenses other than some of the things that Tony mentions with the wages.
Mr. Chairman, if you scroll over to the right, I think you'll show us a column, actually, maybe. Yeah, so variance, admin 22 versus 21. So then if you, maybe if I move this, yeah, now scroll back a little bit so I can see which rows. Then I can identify what, where we're doing some major increases.
In the general fund, Tony, I didn't find any.
Yeah, not much.
In fact, if
Everything's
anything, it went
related to
down a little bit.
salary. Yeah, everything that's an increase is pretty much related to salary.
Okay.
I think there was a 2.72% increase in water and sewer, and the big one was in trash collection, which was 12.47,
Mm-hmm.
12.57. Overall, it was 3.03.
So most of that is from the assessments, I would imagine.
From the.
Yes, for water and sewer, that's correct.
Yeah, so the water assessment. So you're looking at 515 last year up to 535 this year.
Mm-hmm.
The water and sewer, dollar-wise, was $50,000 up, 50,495. And Tony, you added an additional 22.
That was under water sewer.
No, maybe that was Tony, yeah, department variance to town budget was 50,000 you put in it, Tony. And that had to have been for the water sewer increase.
Yeah, I think that's because after Zach gave us his budget, we got the MWRA assessment numbers.
So
Yeah,
it must
so
be,
I think my first draft of my budget included just a placeholder with last year's value, and we were waiting for the both the MWRA as well as the sewer rates to come in.
Right, but that's not in this. This is the town side, right?
Yep, you're looking at the town side right now.
Yeah, okay. So that's off in the enterprise fund.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you'll see that there's not much of a difference between last year's budget and this year's budget on the general fund side, aside for increases in, personnel costs because of the contract, the union contract, and minimum wage. As far as I'm looking at it, you have a couple changes, but it's not huge.
Jeff, you mentioned a 3.1% increase. Was that your number when you took all the enterprise funds and the DPW?
yeah, I added.
That was everything?
Individually, general fund is level funded almost. It is very minor.
Yeah.
The water and sewer was the biggest. Well, actually, it was in the middle with 2.7, and then the trash was the big increase.
Okay, thanks.
But overall, it was 3%, a little over 3% for the three of them.
Yeah, I mean, overall, we tried to level fund the things that we could control. We felt as though like the services, over the past year have been good, and I was pretty happy with the budget. I mean, the things, the MWRA and the sewer was out of our control. The trash was kind of out of our control with the rates. Tony's getting creative with that and trying to see what we can do to save money on that end.
And then we have yet to see the MWRA and Lynn Water and Sewer rate increases.
MWRA, I sent over to you guys last week. It's still a preliminary number, but most likely we're looking at a 4.2% increase compared to last year.
Okay.
And we made that change Thursday night with the Board of Selectmen. I emailed that over to you guys today.
But
Okay.
as far as the sewer increases, we haven't received the definitive answer from Lynn Water and Sewer or the Lynn Treatment Plant. We do have a meeting next week, I believe, Tony. An intermunicipal meeting with Swampscott and Saugus, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more detail now that they're further into their bidding process with the new contract, as well as some of the capital improvements they've been making.
May I ask a question? Does the town know, we've talked about it, but does the town know that this large increase because of the new Lynn treatment plant and all of the stuff, coming out the causeway and all of that, does the town know that this big increase is coming?
I mean, we've talked about it a lot at Board of Selectmen meetings and, at town meeting, of course, when we discussed the major borrowing that we had. Now, obviously, this past year, we didn't have a ton of attendance in September, but, I mean, we've been pretty public about it, but we haven't had, we don't have the exact numbers yet.
Right.
So we can't really, all we know, I mean, they're giving us such a big spread, 20 to 45% increase.
Right, but have we sort of laid some groundwork so that people are gonna know we're gonna be starting to get numbers and that there really is gonna be a big increase?
We're trying, I mean, I guess that we could probably, we haven't sent anything out like with the sewer bill. That would probably be the next step once we have some definitive numbers of what to expect. But, we talk about it publicly.
I think that's a good idea, to put almost an informational pamphlet to say, this is the range that you may be looking at, and this is how it will affect you. It's just a thought.
I'm wondering whether that's something that people might want to be prepared for better. That was my thought.
Zach, this is Dana. I have a question for you.
Sure.
In terms of the allocation of personnel costs to water and sewer, could some of those costs be moved into the general DPW budget to address the $800,000 deficit between the fees and the cost?
I don't have an issue with it unless Tony, I know we've spoken about this before. If you want to speak on any issues you have with moving some of that, the values of some of the payroll expenses out of the.
We can, you can do it, but you're there's different philosophies, I guess, on how to create your budget. When you're trying to account for the costs associated with water and sewer, some of those personnel costs come into play there.
Yeah, I think there is some wiggle room, Dana. I don't think it's significant.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about this, basically one big bucket, but
But
it's
you-
a way of
but when
looking at
you-
water and
Dana,
sewer.
You push that, let's say you took the salary subtotal under sewer of $224,000 and moved it into the general fund. This is what Jeff was mentioning. You have a Prop 2.5 cap on revenue.
you're gonna lose
Every year.
800 grand in revenue.
So you're you're gonna take you'd end up taking $224,000 away from something else in the general fund in order to pay for it.
Right.
Unless, because you don't have, you're capped at, you can only raise so much on property taxes per year.
But there's also best practice on how to account for an enterprise. And so I do think you have to dedicate salaries to the two enterprise funds. And to just put it into perspective, for each, I think it's just a little over 2 FTE that's dedicated each to water and sewer, plus a portion of Zach's salary. So
Right.
Oh, it's just two people?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's basically how my departments are
thank you.
broken up, 2 guys in each one.
All right.
Dana, because that $800,000 is in debt service, the law is written, hey, you can just add this onto your property taxes. But if you move that 800,000 over to water and sewer and then balance it by shifting labor over to general funds, you lose that statute that allows you to get that extra $800,000. So you're shifting the expenses, but you're losing the revenue.
Thanks, Jeff. That makes sense to me. I didn't realize it was just 2 people here, so it's like, it's not gonna get you there.
It's not.
Well, I used to have a full head of hair before I got on this fund, so.
And so did Zach, right?
Yeah, me too.
Hey, one other random question, and I'll stop talking, I promise. The golf course, what is their water bill and who pays it?
They pay it, and it's about, it changes every year. In the last year, which was pretty dry, and they had, their new golf, the maintenance guy, the greenskeeper. They had a new greenskeeper last year. So I think they were around like 15,000
For the year?
Yeah, maybe 16,000.
Would they be impacted by raising the rates, the water and sewer rates?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would say so.
But the town does that again, they pay the whole thing. It does not come out of any town money.
correct.
Thank you.
In the 2 enterprise funds, are rates covering everything this year, or are we digging into the fund balance retained earnings to pay for any of it? 'Cause I know it's not retained earnings. I'm just,
Yeah, well, we're using some retained earnings for some capital. So for there's an article that we were gonna borrow for the purchase of a backhoe and utility truck that we're actually gonna use essentially enterprise free cash, AKA retained earnings, in order to pay for it, which is a good thing. And then we may use some retained earnings on the rubbish side to pay for recycling totes for everybody in town.
we're also using rubbish retained earnings for that compost article.
Yeah,
But other than that, the rates are covering all of the operating costs for the enterprises.
that's good.
And the composting article, you know how that just sits with me. Do we have a plan going forward of what we're going to do with it? The compost area?
Well, it's-
yeah,
it's gonna-
like I discussed, we talked a little bit about this. Zach wasn't on the call before, but right now our plan is to use money from the retained earnings a little bit more than prior to 2 years ago, we were only putting like $25,000 towards compost, which really didn't make a big impact on removing material because of how much new material goes into the site on an annual basis. $50,000 gets us ahead of the curve. So, but we're not clearing it completely out in 1 year. We're kind of just trying to get ahead of the curve, take bigger bites out of it each year to a point where we almost get to a point where we are, we don't really have much of a stockpile, and we're basically transferring anything that comes in that year is going out that year.
As well as in-town use. So we're trying to get to a point where we're functioning properly so that we can use the material that comes in as a product, an end product to use as a topsoil amendment or other types of materials. So we're using the material.
Zach, I thought that we determined that the stuff that goes in that compost was not actually usable. It really was trash.
So we have a historic windrow. Windrow is basically just a linear stockpile of material that has been there for probably 50 years. So again, we have to catch up on that material and get that out of there. And then if compost is managed properly, you cook it, you cook off all the bad seeds, and the end product ends up being a topsoil, a compost, finished compost, or a topsoil additive that you can use, you can possibly sell, you can get rid of it for nothing. The stuff that we have there now that we want to get rid of is really not useful. Like you said, it contains a lot of invasive seeds. It hasn't been composted properly. There's a lot of rocks, there's trash. So that's really what we're trying to get out of there. So not only just to make the area function properly, but also for flood storage. I know that's a huge issue. So
The end result is that we are going to keep a compost pile there. It's not, there's no intention to no longer do it.
no, I think it's an asset to the town. There's a lot of towns that don't have the ability to just drive down the street and get rid of lawn debris. I think it's an asset to the town. I think we should keep it. Again, this is a decision for the town, but at this point, I think the idea is to keep the facility up and running, but clean it up and make it so it's.
Yeah, it would be more of an asset if we manage it properly, and we just got to catch up to a point where we can make that possible, because it's been just a stockpiling piece for a while, instead of, like we said, getting rid of material the same year. Eventually that would be the idea. Material comes in, we get rid of it once a year, and we're back to only using a small portion of that space for stockpiling, and it's temporary.
Yeah. One issue we've been having is that we have a dedicated person that sits down the dump, and they're supposed to check to see the person's a resident. A lot of times they don't have a beach sticker. That's kind of a dead giveaway for a resident. So sometimes people come in, yeah, I'm a resident, I don't have a beach sticker. So they're allowed to dump, whether there's not a guy there. So one of the things we've talked about is having a dedicated dump sticker and have a yearly charge similar to the charge that you use for the beach fee. Because there's a lot of people that use the dump that don't use the beach, and vice versa.
I like that.
So that would kind of give us some operating budget, rather than having an article. So it's just something that we've thought about.
I do like that.
It would also make it, I'm also thinking about kind of our guys down there being able to figure out who's who.
Yeah, I guess the way I look at it is, your trash bill goes towards the compost pile. It's not just curbside collection, it's also collection of trash at local parks. it's the services related to that, and it's also for the compost pile. So people are already, in a sense, paying
Mhm.
for the usage of that, of the compost site. So to introduce a new charge without a new service, doesn't really, again, we're still hitting the same wallets. So, to me, I'd rather not throw another charge on the residents to be able to use the site, but we could definitely improve. We could think of better ways to identify
The users.
the users. But I don't know if I feel comfortable charging people extra to utilize the compost site where they're already their trash bill is already contributing to those costs.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
but along
Tony,
those
also-
same lines, Tony, we're paying, minimum, but we're paying for our annual sticker. I'm still paying property tax.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's the same sticker. Maybe just the beach sticker becomes the town service sticker.
Yep.
You get a part, and the DPW gets part of it. So you don't create this whole another process for a dump sticker. It's the same sticker.
Yeah. But I mean, the work that Zach and the DPW have done in the last year or two, we should commend, because it looks a million times better than it does a couple years ago.
Yeah,
It's
because they
actually
got a grant.
remarkable how much space there is down there.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's not necessarily optics, right? It's flood control.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
supposed to be a wash.
Agreed.
Well, at least it should be the same height, ground level should be the same height as its abutting property.
Agreed.
Yeah, and right now we just have an excess of fill material. It's really not compost. What you see there now is basically 3 different piles of, branches, and then you see a leaf pile, then you see an aged leaf pile. So we're kind of working these piles as they go to try to get to an end product that's either usable, sellable, or at the very least we can get rid of it for nothing. The historic pile is a different animal where we really need to just get rid of it for flood capacity. But the idea is that we get to a point where we're turning this stuff over every year, so there's never really a surplus or a topographic elevation change in there.
Thank
How
you.
many years do you think it would take, Zach, at $50,000 a year to get rid of that historic windrow?
Well, I'll get back to you on that because I want to figure out the volume, get a good volume, and then it really takes the right person. You got to find the person that's looking for it, and we think we've identified a good source, an inexpensive source where we can get rid of a lot of this stuff. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay.
The 50,000, put it this way, the $50,000 will make a huge difference.
Well, I know it did that first year.
Yeah, to
And
the
we did-
eye. Yeah.
Yeah, did that first year.
Thank you.
Do you,
Okay, so are we okay with the operating budgets and the enterprise funds? And when I say okay, I'm talking about just this year, not forward looking. I think we all know we've got some work to do there.
Mhm.
And I'm going to
From
take,
what I can tell, the operating budgets are good for the current year. But we know the elephant's coming.
yep. Yeah. And the challenge is that the way this tends to work is you get past town meeting and everybody goes, "Whew, thank God that's over." And you don't revisit it until this time next year when it's really too late to do anything, forward-looking and substantive. So
I wouldn't mind having a meeting halfway through if that's what it takes
yeah,
to avoid.
right. I think that's where we're going with this. We have not talked about any of the articles. So should we take a spin through the warrant and just kind of cherry pick off any DPW related warrant articles? Snow and ice. Does everyone on FinCom understand how the snow and ice works, how it's budgeted and how it's spent? And if not, maybe we'll ask Tony to do just a real short explanation of that, the Cliff Notes version. Would that be beneficial or?
Sure, why don't you do that?
All right, Tony, you're on.
Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, Cliff Notes version.
The state allows us to deficit spend in snow and ice. And we are also obviously required to pass a balanced budget. So what you'll see in municipal budgets is a notoriously underfunded snow and ice account. So that's what we do here. We fund about $30,000 in the snow and ice account. And then at the following town meeting after winter, we can either utilize, funds, unspent funds in a transfer in a article, let's see, Article 1 transfer, where we can take money from the existing fiscal year and throw it into snow and ice if we're not spending it on other stuff. Or we can raise it on the recap. And Allison can give you the Cliff Notes of what that means if you'd like. And then as far as like how much we spend historically on snow and ice, last year we got away with, I think about like $80,000. It was very low. We're probably at that amount, about at that amount already this year.
Yeah, we're close to that right now,
And we haven't
it
even,
never snows again.
yeah, we're almost through. We got to get through March.
Yeah.
All right. So the net of that is in the omnibus, there's a line item that says snow and ice, and it's like $15,000 or something like that.
I think it's 30.
30 is the
30?
minimum.
Okay. All right. And then this year, I'm assuming this Article 2 is to make up the difference between last year's budget of 30 and whatever the actual was.
The current
Yeah.
current year, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so that's Article 2. That is relatively routine.
Article 7.
Article 7 essentially authorizes the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund. Article 8 is using retained earnings from water and sewer. It's $30,000. We do this every year. It's essentially paving money for when we have a break. When we have an unexpected break, we have some additional paving money there to patch the road. Article 9 authorizes the rubbish enterprise. Article 10 is the $50,000 from retained earnings for the compost area.
Tony?
Yes.
That Article 8, wasn't that one of 4 articles all for the same thing?
Paving?
Well, you had 30,000 that's under water and sewer, but I think there's 3 more articles regarding paving that's actually combined comes up to like $250,000, which is part of the long-term plan that you developed for road
There's-
paving.
Yeah, I think there's 2 more articles. So chapter 90, we just got that the
Okay,
other
there's one
day.
of them, yeah.
So chapter 90 is our state aid for paving. We get about $90,000 for that. And then we have our 5-year paving plan calls for about $200,000 in paving on an annual basis. So we supplement that with the other article. I'm not sure what number it is, but it's for about $100,000.
So it's 3 articles really, which are for all the paving in the town, just in different funds, different, where the money's coming from.
So the chapter 90 and the supplemental, I believe it's 100,000. It's a different article. Those 2 will be combined to pave roadways. And it's based on an engineering plan that we got done, I believe it was 2 years ago, that laid out a 5-year plan. It's not exactly following it to the T because some of the roadways, they didn't really take into consideration some utility problems that some of these roadways have, where we wouldn't want to pave. So we're just kind of picking off that list and trying to follow it as best we can. The $30,000 is for emergencies, things like water breaks, coastal damage, storm damage, sewer breaks, that type of thing. Whereas the actual fix of the pipes is carried in the budget, whereas the paving is carried under the 30,000 item.
And
Do
it's,
you have the flexibility to pick which budget if one fund gets empty, can you pick from another? So you can keep on getting the road work done?
I think I could pick from the 100 borrowing and the 30. The chapter 90 has some regulations on what you can use it for.
yeah, the functionality of it is a little bit different. So for the water sewer enterprise 30,000, that comes out of retained earnings. If we don't need it, we don't spend it, and it just rolls over to the following year. Then every spring, usually after pothole season, Zach will put together, we'll put together the budget for that year's paving, and we'll establish a list and put it out to bid. We'll save a little bit for the fall in case there's any type of work that is necessary come the fall, but, or I'm sorry, you're actually in the next fiscal year. So in the fall, we'll do a little bit if it's necessary, but we try to save it for the spring because in the wintertime, the plows beat up the roads. So you spend most of your chapter 90 and your borrowed 100,000, you combine the 2 and you put out a bid for, that amount of money, and you do a lot of that work in the spring.
Yeah, so we'll try to maximize the amount of the roadways we can rebuild or repave with the 100 as well as the chapter 90 this spring.
As well as
2021, and then in 2022 spring, we'll do the same. That $30,000, like I said, is basically throughout the whole year, you're gonna have some pavement issues where that $30,000 is gonna be used for smaller issues. Whereas the the chapter 90 and the 100 is used for a larger project that we put out to bid and try to maximize the amount of roadways we can get done.
as well as we'll get some money from National Grid too, for the work that they did on the Nahant Road and the work they did up on Howe Road. Instead of having them just patch it, in the middle of the winter, they'll give us some funds, and we'll include it in our overall list of paving to do. Can you scroll down on the warrant?
That 16's the 100,000.
Mm-hmm. MWRA borrowing, so we've had this every year. MWRA offers a zero interest loan program. We have plenty of water infrastructure work to do on our capital plan. So we put this in on the warrant ever since, as long as this program's available, it makes sense to get authorization to utilize it. So once we have, if this passes at town meeting, then we will take a look at, our capital plan, what projects we want to take on, if it makes sense to borrow for this year or to wait until next year when we have an additional approval, and then combine the two for a $400,000 job. That's what we just did in this past year. So some of the other factors are there, if we're doing sewer work, if we just paved a road, there's a number of different factors that come into play of deciding what to tick off on the water capital plan.
This just gives us the ability to borrow up to that amount.
Yep.
If we see fit.
And what is its term? How long do we pay the 200 off over?
Allison, do you know the answer to that question?
How many years do we pay it over? I'm actually not sure. Let me pull up the debt schedule. Hold on.
My impression was that this was just sort of like a rolling over thing.
Is that like a lend lease? Just give us the money and we promise to give it back some year.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
No, there's a defined term.
I somehow don't think they're that generous, though.
No,
This last year,
it's 10 years. It's a 10-year loan.
This last year, they provided people the ability to suspend payback because of COVID.
Right, so, it ends up kind of like being a one-time $200,000 thing that keeps rolling every 10 years.
Well, we won't borrow it. So this article will give us the authority to do it, but we won't borrow it if we think like we want to combine this with a job maybe next year and go for more authorization. We won't borrow until we need to.
Oh, so it carries from year to, I didn't realize that. It carries from year to year?
Yeah, we submit the minutes from the town meeting to MWRA saying that we've been given the authority to borrow up to 200. They put us in line, I guess, in their system, but we don't actually pull the money from them until we need it. So
Right.
we have,
But if we authorize $200,000 this year, we don't borrow anything against it. Does that $200,000, the availability of that continue into the following year?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we just did that this past year.
okay.
So this brings the borrowing ability up to 4.
No, we're starting fresh. So we just did a almost close to $500,000 water job in town that was the combination of like 2 or 3 different authorizations.
Did I just hear you say that last year we borrowed it, we had no interest for a year and they forgave it? And we can do the same thing?
Last year, they offered MWRA, because of COVID, offered municipalities the option to skip a payback year. We did not take advantage of that because I don't believe we even hit our first payback year because we just did the borrowing last year. even though we had the authority to borrow for the past couple years.
So we have this untapped borrowing potential sitting there.
Not anymore. We used all of our untapped for that $500,000 job this past year.
Okay,
So this would be, now we're at 0. This would be our first authorization under, for future work.
And it's interest-free for a year, and then you have 10 years to pay it back.
It's 0 interest. That's fixed for the 10 years.
cool.
Cool.
Is 200,000 the most we can get?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, buy 20 million.
I know. Well, I don't know what, I mean,
This is better than a money tree.
that's why we put it on there. As long as they're offering it, we want the authorization, but I'm not, particularly certain as to if there's a cap on how much, it might be percentage based per community, based on your contribution. I don't know. Have to double check that.
I was
Article
just
20
looking at, sorry, Tony, I was delayed. I was just looking at previous years that we've done this, and it's always been below 200,000 that we've actually borrowed. So I'm also not sure.
Hmm.
But then the way this is structured, it's kind of open-ended, meaning you
Kind of
don't,
absurd not to borrow it and pay it back at 0%.
Okay.
right? Yeah. But we ought to find out. I mean, can we get more? And when I said open-ended, well, it's not, it's only for repair and replacement of water distribution lines. Not even sewer distribution or sewer collection, just water.
Just water.
Okay. All right, enough of Article 17,
That's
yes?
hallucination.
DPW capital, Article 20.
We're using retained earnings. So last year we were talking about borrowing for the backhoe and the utility truck, and instead this year, we're using essentially free cash within the enterprise account or retained earnings to pay for these capital needs. Zach, you can describe
Yeah, so
the ask.
yeah, so what we're asking for is a new utility truck. The utility truck is basically, the leader of the fleet. It's basically the emergency response vehicle. So it's similar to, like the fire engine. It's always kept nice. It's got fully stocked the tools. It's ready to go at the moment's notice. The one we have now, it's the oldest truck in the fleet. It's a 2011, and it's seen its day for that purpose. Most of the utility body, which is basically the rear end of the truck, a lot of the cabinets have rotted out. A lot of the equipment on it doesn't work anymore, so it's really at the end of its life for that purpose. So that's something that we definitely, I recognize as a definite need. The backhoe, I believe the backhoe is also roughly around 10 or 12 years old. And that was deemed unsafe by Schmidt Equipment. So Schmidt Equipment regularly comes and they service the machines. When I first started, they kind of let me know the issues of it. And finally, about 2 or 3 months ago, they said that, it's unsafe for use due to just physical rot. So the cab itself was rotting off the top of the machine. So if there was ever a rollover, it would result in a serious injury. So that's the reason why we're asking for a backhoe. And obviously the backhoe is the workhorse for the crew. It allows us to do, any of the water or sewer repair work, as well as, digging out outfalls and working on the beach and stuff like that. So.
But it also it also it loads salt into the spreaders for
Yeah.
snow and ice.
Yeah.
So
Ouch.
because we needed it, because our old one is basically condemned and we needed something for this year, Zach negotiated a deal with the
Vendor.
with the vendor, basically like a rent to buy or a lease to buy option. So we have a new backhoe at the DPW currently. It would be the one that we would purchase with this article. And the rental costs of it, we're charging towards snow and ice because that's what it's being used for at the moment. So the total cost of the backhoe, some of it's being paid for currently out of snow and ice, and then the rest of it would be paid for through this retained earning article.
Questions, comments?
2 vehicles here, right?
Yes.
A piece of equipment and a vehicle.
All right, what else do we have here? That's DPW capital, community preservation. We're not discussing Article 22 tonight, no way, no how. 23, kind of the same amendment.
24 kind of falls under DPW in a sense. Mass DEP is pushing for all communities to make improvements on their II issues, infiltration and inflow. So essentially what this is clean water getting into the sewer system. Sometimes that's because of broken pipes, where you have groundwater seeping into the storm drains. I mean, into the sewer pipe. Sometimes it's illegal connections where you have residential sump pumps or downspouts that are tied into the sewer system. So part of our requirements put on us by DEP through the administrative consent order is this bylaw amendment. So this language actually comes from the state. It provides us authorization and enforcement surrounding the issue of II. It also requires the implementation of a 4-to-1 II removal plan for large redevelopment projects. Zach, can you explain the 4-to-1?
Yeah, so I believe it's basically for every is it every gallon that you're adding to the sewer system, you have to remove, is it
I think
4
for every
gallons?
4 gallons you add in, you have to remove 1 gallon of, well, I guess I'm not confident enough to speak on it, so I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, ultimately, this bylaw gives us grounds to stand on to begin to correct the issues of inflow, which is Tony described as trench drains and floor drains and sump pumps and other means of getting
When we have
into the sewer system.
when we have rain or storm surge flooding type events, we can see anywhere from 1.5 to 2 times the amount of volume going through the sewer system.
Can you see
compared
where
to
it's
a
coming
driveway.
from?
And that's the sewer system as opposed to the storm drain system?
Correct.
Wow.
So
So-
if you look at it, we're discharging to Lynn Sewer a significantly larger amount of volume than we're taking in from MWRA.
No,
I
my,
got a
my
sump
question
pump,
still
but it
stands.
doesn't.
Give me 1 second. Tony, and Zach, can you see where the additional is coming from?
Close. So we have, as Zach said, you have 11 pump stations around town, which are fed by certain areas of the town. So you can start to pinpoint where certain areas have more inflow than others, but then it requires further investigation as to, why is that additional volume feeding that pump station? So we're somewhat there. The other part of it was we actually just completed this past year a camera and debris removal work on all of our sewer pipes. So we actually have a written out capital plan of our sewer system, our services, and it's ranked based on, the type of break or small, leakage or other type of issues that we discovered with that camera work.
So that the camera work basically did a town-wide camera of the sewer system, and we've identified all sources of infiltration. So that gives us an idea of where there are major cracks, where there may be a catch basin, a town-owned catch basin that's draining into the sewer system. It did not get into the detail where we're actually seeing where the inflow is coming from. So again, an inflow, you may have a sump pump that you just put into your sink. You're pumping groundwater into the sewer. So it's very difficult to determine where exactly all these inflow sources are coming from. One of the methods you use is a smoke test. So you need to figure out how we're going to attack or how we're going to go about figuring out where all the inflow is coming from. But we're starting by attacking the infiltration.
Town issues.
Yep.
Yeah. We also just put a bid out. It's on the street right now for watertight manholes in the lowland areas of town. So that if we do have a flood, it's not, leaking through the manhole covers into the sewer system.
So the more we can shrink our piece of the pie to Lynn Water Sewer by doing these type of things, the better our rates will be.
Yep. And my last question, what if this fails on town meeting floor?
Well, I
I
don't
don't
know if I
know.
thought of that.
We'll report it to DEP and see what happens. I don't know.
Okay,
Although this sort of thing doesn't fail.
it doesn't usually, but it could be one of these that somebody takes exception to some article in there, some subsection in there. All right, anyway. Bylaw, snow removal,
I'm willing to
sidewalk.
bet they probably have their sump pump tied into the sewer system.
Well, yeah.
Snow removal, sidewalks. This is, somewhat kind of DPW related. This is an issue that's been brought up to the Board of Selectmen regarding the requirement for residents to remove snow on sidewalks in front of their property. This is language similar to what's over in Swampscott, but we added language. If you keep scrolling down, we added a provision there, letter C, to provide the Board of Selectmen the ability to provide waivers for disabled or elderly or other special needs.
I think that's it.
Oh, the tree bylaw.
Oh, the tree bylaw. Yeah, did I go by it?
And
Yeah.
the citizen petition one too, if you want to get into that. But tree bylaw. This is required to become a tree city. Something that Zach and Vi Paddock and Nancy Cantalmo have been working on together. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah,
Let's know the version of that.
Yeah, we're trying to become a tree city. Basically opens us up to some grant funding for planting and care of trees. And this is one of the requirements to become a tree city.
I want to ask about that. Is there any requirement that the trees that are planted or the trees that are maintained in such a way that they don't block anybody's view?
No.
Well, I think that that's a miss, frankly.
Mhm.
Judy, this is
Yeah, I
Dana.
mean,
Can I make a comment
that's
on that?
really,
The tree bylaw, where does the tree warden fit into this structure that's being proposed? Because my last reading of this was that the tree warden was complete.
What was the last part you said there, Dana?
Is that right, Zach?
I didn't catch the.
Dana, we lost
That
the last.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
My understanding of this article is that this proposal is going to create a tree commission of some sort. It's going to sideline the tree warden. So I'm wondering why we need this. If we have a tree warden, it's supposed to take care of our trees.
Well, the tree warden, I mean, his job isn't really to take care of the trees. He's really the mediator when it comes to a tree issue that I may have. A lot of times I get calls from residents describing a tree that may or may not have disease or damage or that type of thing. So just to have a professional set of eyes look at the tree that's when we call Mark in to say, okay, yes, this tree is damaged. It needs to come out. No, you can get away with a head cleaning or a pruning. So he's really just professional oversight. Part of this tree bylaw will create a tree task force, which is basically created by myself or the superintendent of public works, and it creates a group that's basically offers guidance to where we're planting the trees, what type of trees we're planting, what trees need to be removed, and that type of thing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Zach. Just encourage
also
everybody
required.
to take a look at this and read it, because the way it was written, it's a little controversial. I'll take a look at it. I know it sounds kind
agree.
of benign at first, but
I
you know.
agree. And I think that although, if I recall, the most controversial pieces were pulled out before this
Yes.
last year, before.
Yeah, there's actually, what I follow now is the state law. And it's not much different than the state law. It's basically adopting our own tree bylaws. And if you read it, we have some highlighted text where we added to the state law. But for the most part, it's following state law, which we follow right now.
Okay, thanks, Zach and Judy. I'll take a look at that and read it again.
I will too.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Article 37. Lowlands drainage. I honestly don't remember. I've sat in and listened to a couple of meetings regarding this topic, and they're all running together in my head. Has the Finance Committee had discussion of this, or am I confusing that with another meeting?
Well, no, we discussed the fact that they're asking for money, and without, what we discussed originally was that I thought before an article can come up, they got to come up where the money's coming from, and this doesn't do it. And then we got into a discussion about citizen petitions and what the Finance Committee will or will not back. And I don't think we ever got back to this topic.
Yeah, so we have not heard kind of the substance of what this article is
I thought
doing.
Tony explained to us that it was kind of evolved from initially a citizens petition into an article that's supported by the town, and the funding mechanism is in the current budget, if I understand correctly. Tony, but I thought we talked about this last time, but Tony, do you want to remind us all again?
Yeah, I mean, all three citizen, we got no new citizen petitions this year. All these citizen petitions are rolled over from last year. So as part of that agreement, with them, because of COVID, trying to keep controversial or personal issues or citizen petition issues that were, didn't meet the threshold of like essential articles, that they would be postponed until this town meeting. So here they are once again. But with this one specifically, the drainage issue in the lowlands is a priority of the selectmen, myself, and Zach's, and the neighborhood down there. So we do support this petition in part. We believe that in order to fit this into the budget, it should be borrowed for. And we need that. And we also think that there's some language changes in here to broaden, what the dollar amount can be used for. This is a little bit specific on a project that, we have a disagreement as to where it ranks in the priority, and the $100,000 would unlikely fund the cost of a 36-inch diameter storm drain, and which may not be permittable anyway. So we have an alternative plan that we believe will make significant improvements in storm drainage or storm recovery that we could use the $100,000 towards.
Right, but I think, Tony, that when if I recall from the last time we talked about it, there's a couple problems with this. Again, we have a citizen petition that's looking to appropriate money from some unknown source, which isn't how citizen petitions are supposed to be done. It's work that the Board of Selectmen thinks it need to be done. So why it's coming through as a citizen petition, I don't understand that at all. And I don't understand where they got the idea that it would be $100,000. So as
You
a,
have to ask the lead petitioner some of those questions. We don't have the pen when these articles are written up and they're circulated amongst town for signature. And we do not have the ability to make changes to a citizen petition when it gets submitted to the clerk.
no, but if the citizen petition was such a way that the town was planning to do something with this anyway, then the citizen petition could be withdrawn because it's not well understood.
It looks like it's only to fund plans and permitting.
Right, but where would they come up with the number? And again, why would they can't come up with the number without finding a funding source. The funding source can't be for us to, borrow. That's not a funding source.
It's kind of open-ended, up to $100,000 or any sum of money.
There's a couple of things that just don't quite fit.
I don't disagree. We cannot make changes to the language of this
No.
citizen petitions. We can present an alternative article, which we had this conversation already about, how, trying to be less confusing to the residents when they see the warrant, and also minimizing the amount of articles. Or we can, move to amend the language of this on the floor.
But I get that, Tony. What I don't understand, so perhaps, I really need some help with this. I thought that a citizen petition couldn't be brought unless a funding source was identified. So in this case, we're allowing it to be brought without a funding source identified.
No. Citizen petitions are, as long as you have the right amount of signatures, you get on the warrant. That the
Like a ballot
rule-
question?
Right, the rule, like a ballot question, the rule that the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen have agreed upon, and the moderator and the clerk, which is usually the first thing read at town meeting, is that if anybody moves to pass or propose a new, article or initiative, that they need to identify where the funding is coming from, and it can't be from the reserve fund
Or the stabilization fund.
or stabilization. Well, it could be from stabilization, but you need a 2/3 vote in order to pull from there.
Okay.
But,
So that the
Then this
mechanics, the
is
mechanics of this then would be, we pass that, whatever, that rule at the beginning of the town meeting, and everything proceeds normally until we get to this article, and then that kind of trips the rule. And okay, here's $100,000 petitioners. How are you going to fund this?
Can we just invite the petitioner to one of our meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that answer get all our questions answered from the primary source?
Well, I mean, yes, and I agree that that's a great thing to do. But again, I'm just trying to clarify. I thought you couldn't post a warrant without having a funding source, but apparently you can put whatever you want up. It's just on the floor, you have to identify the funding source.
That was my speculation. I'm not,
So one of the things that I said I do, I don't know if it was at the last meeting or the meeting before, is I said I would go and investigate a little bit, like the legacy and the lore around whether or not finance committees can or cannot make recommendations on citizens petitions. I haven't fully researched. I don't think I had enough of our own town meeting books to go back as far as I needed to flesh out how our community has treated that precedent or lack of. But I did find two very good guides. One related, published by the Natick Finance Committee, and another published by the Lancaster Town Meeting. And they, the title of the Natick bulletin is Guide for Citizens Petitions and Warrant Articles. And it's, I think it's a 50-page document that basically lays out, at least in Natick, the answers to some of the questions that we have. It has flow charts and processes and things that kind of explain how it all works. So what I would recommend we do, or one of the things I'll do, is I'll forward these documents on to you guys. And I think some version, maybe we can we can decide what we believe the Nahant policy to be, and then maybe crib some of the content from these types of documents to kind of add to our own book. And then, then we'll have it as a reference. So when we have these questions in the future, we can look at the guide that's in the book to kind of remind us. But it gets at, I think, a lot of the things that you're wondering or questioning, Judy.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
all
So
right.
I'll send those out tomorrow.
So
Thank you.
mechanics and policy aside, is everyone clear on what the substance of this article is? Meaning, this sum of money, what is it supposed to be accomplishing? And
I think Julie's point about, getting maybe Christine Licio as a lead petitioner in, I mean, obviously she's had conversations with Tony, and Tony, Tony, I think, understands her and the petitioner's sentiment in the context of the problems that he and Zach see in that area. They just don't necessarily 100% agree of how to go about resolving it, right? So I guess then our place in the puzzle could be just to kind of hear Christine out, ask her the questions. We've already kind of fleshed it out with Tony and Zach, and then come to our own assessment.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's between the petitioner and the selectmen that this thing needs to get resolved.
Could we
We
invite
should have
Christine?
we should have an understanding of it, where she's coming from. I mean, I understand it. And I understand that some things that we cannot do down there due to the wall that's on private property, the blocked off drain that was what helped with the drainage down there. So I understand that. But, you know, as far as the funding goes, I'm not sure how that works. I'd love us to have some policy on that.
And I can speak to the town's process and plans, and preference, you know, and maybe, you know, it's starting to become clear to me that maybe a separate article written by the selectmen that is in line with the town's plan for this issue be presented, instead of just the citizens petition and then, you know, not having any language ahead of time on what the town would be looking for. And then obviously, should one pass, the other doesn't need to.
Right. Okay.
Would
Does anyone,
do you think that would be more clear, Judy?
Yes,
I mean, it's a problem that has to
absolutely.
be taken care of.
It sounds like a town, you know, drainage is a town responsibility anyway.
Yeah.
So, and I would certainly be more comfortable if the town has a plan, let's pony it up and say what it is.
Yeah.
okay, does
Thank
anyone
you.
on the committee know, who is it, Christine Licio?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you mind reaching out to her and asking if she can join us?
I will do that. Yes.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then we'll have to post it, right? That she's going
Yes.
to come and speak.
Yeah,
Okay.
certainly. We'll put her on the agenda, whether it's, well, when we figure it out, whether it's next week or soon thereafter, we'll make sure it's on the agenda.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. It probably makes sense, as long as we're talking about that kind of stuff. It probably makes sense to hear from, I don't know if you got, I also said I would go back into my information related to the tree bylaw and send out what I thought was the most recent cleaned up version of those documents. And I guess we can decide after I send those out if we do indeed need to have, I guess we've heard from Zach, so maybe that's enough. It's a town article. We don't necessarily need to hear from Vi again. So
Yeah,
No,
Pete,
but
if you do have questions with that, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm going to
Okay.
review that in detail again.
okay. Yeah, we'll
I
come
think
to you.
Judy's concern on that could be incorporated into the task force,
Yep,
right?
good.
all right.
As something that they, you know, a box they need to check before they, you know, come up with a plan of where to plant trees,
Mhm.
is how that interferes with, you know, sight lines of a home, you know, an ocean view or something like that.
So, Judy,
And by the time you guys have Christine come on, if we're gonna do our own article, I'll probably have that on by then too. So, you know, what the other day when I met with Jeff, I presented, we presented at a Board of Selectmen meeting, and I can clean that up and present that to you guys.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, Tony, that when Jeff, I listened in on the enterprise specific conversation that Jeff arranged with Tony and Zach. Zach couldn't be there, but in that meeting, Tony communicated and showed some examples of, stormwater mediation, mitigation type activities that are actually, happening and occurring in the lowlands area that I would think would give the petitioners confidence that the town is moving in the direction that they want. I don't know if we want to dive into that now, but they know what they see what's going on down there, and I would imagine they're happier,
Yeah, I think that most people see what we're doing, and especially this past month or so, the work that we did and completed like 24 hours prior to a storm showed extremely positive results. So, folks in the area, I think, saw that immediately. So we hope that we provide them confidence, but, I think that, to be fair, I guess, and respectful is some folks, one being the lead petitioner on here, is dead set on this outfall pipe that no longer operates. And so while we may have a difference in opinion as to how the town should prioritize, work that's going to make a difference, some folks feel very strongly about that one pipe that, we don't feel has as much of an impact as some of these other avenues. So there's still some divide there, but ultimately, as we go through flood-like storms or flood situations and we dewater it quickly, we're going to gain more and more confidence of the neighborhood.
Great, thank you, Tony.
Okay. Anything else Public Works related? Jeff, you?
well, I'm still hung up on this citizens petition. If it went in front of the town and the town says, "No, we don't want to do it. We don't want to spend $100,000." It's a dead issue. But if the town says, "Yeah, we want to do it, and we want the town to spend $100,000," well, then the town would have to vote a second petition, a second warrant that said, "Yeah, we vote to spend $100,000 to do this." Or if they eliminated the $100,000, it says, "We got a problem down here. We want the town to consider fixing it." Well, then it goes to the town manager and he's got to come up with a plan to fix it.
So we have a plan. The plan that we have isn't going to cost $100,000. But it's going to make a serious impact on our ability to dewater the area in a large flood-like scenario. But the additional funds there's always more work to be done. So having the additional funds, they can be used towards other, priority 2 or priority 3 or priority 4. But we don't have it in the current budget. So the only way to fund it would be to borrow for it.
Is the 100,000?
Unless you wanted to, unless you didn't want to, the budget we presented does leave extra funds on the table to build up free cash in the future. So we're balancing, a number of different things when we put together the budget. So we could use existing free cash now towards this priority. But it may, impact our free cash amounts in the future.
I
I
think
guess,
too,
I
it
guess
sets
the
up,
thing,
go ahead.
I guess the thing that, Judy, I don't want to speak for you, but I think I'm starting to see what you're saying. A citizen's position should, to me, is we want we got a problem, Nahant. Get your departments to fix it. They took it to the next step. They said, we got a problem, Nahant, and here's your solution, and this is how much we want you to spend on it.
Right.
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 Problematic.
And that's where the hangup is. We
Right.
know management recognizes there's a problem, but our solution or management's solution is different than the petitioner. So if that passes, are we locked into it's their plan? Or are they just looking for us to fix it? And now management, you go out and come up with a solution.
No, it's a very specific article of what
Exactly.
they want us to do.
Yeah,
And
so they're
so,
sort of telling you what and how to do it.
Yeah.
right, and then how much to spend. And frankly, as a town, we don't need to borrow anything else. We have a lot of debt. So, I mean, how would a citizen know, A, how much it's going to cost? It doesn't, there's no execution about where the plans come from and the permitting. None of that execution's in there. All of that's going to cost, at least, if not in actual cash, certainly in time. And so all of that is missing. And I think it sets a bad precedent where we allow citizens petitions to come in and say, town in Nahant, you spend money, and it gets voted on town floor. Where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
Well, so this is where I'm getting hung up with. I agree with you, Judy, but we do not have the power to turn away a poorly written citizen petition. If they have the signatures, it comes in. So you make that argument at town meeting.
Right. That's
All
right.
right.
Or
That-
we
that's
put
the-
in, an article, if we're supportive of it in part, we can put in our own article, that is written the way we'd like it to be written, identifies a funding source, and, we take that up as separately. And if it passes, then, you have an argument to say that this article doesn't need to pass.
Right, and that's kind of directionally where I understood we were going to be going was,
Right.
Well, originally we were talking about just amending this on the floor to
Couldn't we talk
what
to-
we would want it to look like.
Couldn't we talk to Christine Licio and see if she'd like to, she can work with our questions?
In order to change this, she would have to,
I don't know, how do you change an article?
well, this is where it gets awkward because this was submitted last year, not this year. But you certainly need the signatures of everybody that signed the original petition on any amendment.
What if the finance committee voted and said, look, we don't support this issue, but we do support the issue being submitted by the town manager?
Right,
Let me come up with an article.
yeah, and the cleanest way to do it would be to reach an understanding with the petitioners that if the town article passes, this gets withdrawn. They voluntarily withdraw this.
Right. Then we put the town article in front of it.
Can they do that at town meeting? Say we withdraw the article?
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
That might be a solution.
I believe so, but if not, it just gets voted down.
Right. And kind of my question is, do you want the finance committee to act as some sort of a mediator in this, or do you want to deal with it?
Let
And
me,
that
let me
kind
get
of came
back
out,
to you.
I kind of came out the wrong when I asked it, but you know where I'm going.
Yeah. Let me get back to you
Okay,
on that.
but we should still talk to Christine Licio.
Yeah, I will reach out to her.
Okay.
And I think, like I said, when I send you guys, I don't want to share my screen to drag you down here, but there's a 3-page list of bubbles and flow charts, that's, the title of this page says getting an article on the warrant. And then the first bifurcation is from a town agency or from a citizen's petition. And then it has a whole series of things that if you had read this document as a citizen's petitioner, you would know you should probably button up all the loose ends related to these different aspects before you push it further, so that when it gets to the end of the next page flow chart, it's something that the finance committee can pass a reasonable judgment on. So we're not there yet, but maybe we can get there in the future.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on from DPW. Let's see, it is 9:15. We've been here 2.25 hours. I sent a note to John earlier saying there were 2 things I wanted to do just administratively. One is to assign articles, any articles that kind of aren't assigned already, so that everybody's clear on what's what. And the second was just to talk about the publication of the book. So in the interest of time, John, you're
Yeah.
free to weigh in on this. I'm
Yeah.
thinking perhaps you and I should just take a stab at assigning articles to people and have that ready for next meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what I had started to do, this afternoon is, if you remember last year, we had that kind of summary tracking table that kind of listed all the warrant articles, who was responsible for them, if we had voted them, and if the recommendation had been written. And what I was going to try to do is, before the next meeting, by this weekend, I'll make a version of that kind of tracking spreadsheet for the current warrant that we have in front of us. One of the things that I think will be somewhat easy is a lot of the things that are showing up on the warrant are either kind of the boilerplate standard template things that show up every year. So those are easy to knock off and easy to assign. And then we have a whole nother subset of things that we kind of dealt with last year, but weren't on our kind of essentials warrant that we worked on in the fall. And so those are carryovers. So in theory, a lot of the work has been done on those as well. And we already have legacy assignments. So I'll put all that together so we can look at it collectively, and then, as Bob said, fill in the holes, or maybe we can prospectively try to fill in the holes. And then if we need to change it, we'll change it. But I'll do that by this weekend.
Thank you, John.
Awesome, thank you.
Great, thank you. That was a great spreadsheet.
Yeah. And then also the thing that, I think, two or three FinCom chairs before, and also Perry did it last year when he started off, he kind of took the warrant, the Word document, and inserted in kind of placeholder recommendation statements, that kind of reminded us of how we described things in the past. Not that we have to do it the same way again, but I'll try to make that same document, because I think that's a good starting point as well.
Okay, perfect.
That makes
All
sense.
right, so, yeah, that makes absolutely perfect sense, and thank you. So let's spend 15 minutes and no more just talking about how does this book get compiled. I have never done it, so and what I'm trying to get at is, how can we divide and conquer? so that it doesn't all fall, it always seems to fall on one individual.
Yeah. So I definitely don't want to talk about it for 15 minutes. But
Okay, less than 15 minutes.
but I will say that the key is just having the time and having the accurate documents as they're gonna be incorporated into the book as soon as possible. So that stems from the recommendation statements that the committee makes, and it also is, you know, on the town side, having all the spreadsheets and budget documents that are, you know, ready as soon as possible. So once all the documents are ready, then it's kind of this, you know, this process of creating PDFs and then using a PDF organizer to kind of shuffle everything in so that the printer has what he wants. And all the printer wants is a final PDF. They don't want to do any assembly or graphic manipulation. They just want a PDF to print, address, and mail.
Okay, so basically we're producing one giant PDF, camera,
Right.
what they used to call camera ready.
Correct. And
Okay.
that, you know, like when I sat down for, you know, many hours on that weekend, all I was doing is taking, you know, essentially screenshots or PDF shots of all of the budget documents and then figuring out how to put them together and putting all these documents together.
Okay,
And
so that our starting spot should be like a list, or better yet, a spreadsheet of all of the documents that we need,
yep.
and where do we get them?
Yeah, and I can do, I'll work on, I won't work on that by this weekend, but I will work on that in the near term, because basically what I pulled from was a previous iteration of the warrant book that Brendan Ward had done. And so he has this, you know, cloud-based website where all these PDFs, you know, with sections 1 through 32, each lived in their own file. And so I saw that, understood how it's put together, and then said, oh, okay, I got to create the same thing for 2020. So now that I've done it once, it's a lot more comprehensible. But your point about just knowing what are the documents that need to be in the book and having them as soon as possible, those are the keys. And then as far as how you get from those elements to the actual book itself, that's, you know, that's me showing one or two other people looking over my shoulder how I did it. It's, I don't think, it's just not one of those things that I think, you know, 8 or 9 people can do collectively. They can help create the source documents, but they can't put it together, if that makes sense.
John, is there
Yeah.
some way that we could do just the warrant articles and then point people to a website where they could pick up all the other pieces so we don't have to print that stuff?
You mean just I guess we could, but I would, I don't know. As a citizen, I'm pretty, I guess, used to having the book and the way that it comes.
Okay.
I mean, it came somewhat
fine.
different last year. So I think a lot of the appendices that are in there are kind of, nobody probably ever does look at them, but
Oh, no, I look at them and I love the paper. But I wondered, is, you know, as a town cost, is it time that this is our opportunity, because we started that last fall?
yeah.
This is our opportunity to just change the way of working. The warrant articles and it references to website. If you want the detail, you go to the website.
Yeah. That we could do that. I mean, I think one of the things we did last year is I don't remember exactly how it changed the printing cost or the logistics, but we went away from that kind of rigidly bound book to more of just kind of a paper, a stapled paper book.
Mhm.
I mean, it still had 110 pages, which is essentially the same number of pages that our previous year's warrant book had. So, I mean, it was kind of it wasn't as classy, so to speak. You know, you're not going to put it on your bookshelf and stack it up, but it accomplished the same thing, and maybe it was cheaper and quicker. I don't remember. I'd have to channel Bobby Joe Blair or, you know, whoever's keeping those numbers now and inform that. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I mean, maybe a combination of the two.
We have in the past discussed an entirely
Virtual book.
digital virtual book.
Hmm.
And the concern has always been that there are folks that don't have that capability or just aren't comfortable enough with that capability that it would really work for them.
Yeah, it would require a change in our bylaw.
Oh, yeah.
I think the bylaw says that your book with your recommendation has to be delivered to the doorstep of every registered voter 7 days prior to the meeting. So you could shrink it down to just the warrant and your recommendations, and then everything else is digital without a bylaw vote. Or you could change the bylaw and make it completely digital.
Yeah. Or to just really go out on a limb, could we just send a postcard to everyone that says,
Here it is. Yeah,
go
to
to
this
this,
website.
go to this URL and you'll find everything.
I don't think that would satisfy the requirement of the bylaw.
I don't
As
think
written.
people would like that. There's
Okay.
too many Luddites in town.
Right. I understand. I may be one of those.
I was thinking I'm one of those
I'm
too.
a neo-Luddite though, not just.
Right. I'm just thinking about the how much money we would save.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it was just conversation. Thank you.
While you're talking about money, we have been meeting somewhat regularly now about, vendors and the logistics surrounding town meeting itself. So I just wanted to tee up that we will need to come to the FinCom for likely for a reserve fund transfer for the costs of town meeting. We're expecting, I think we need to plan for 800 people. And the goal would be to have everybody under a roof, under a tent, so that we can take on the meeting, within one weekend. I've discussed with the moderator, and we're going to continue to have discussions about potentially, if needed, rolling into Sunday. Typically, the town has always avoided Sunday, but naturally, if we have another 4 hours to go, it's really not a weeknight thing, and the longer we hold on to that tents and audio and visual, the more it costs the town. So we might have to make an exception this year, but I will, we'll be bringing those details to you. Last year, cost us 30 to 40 grand, and then throw on the 10 grand of, your standard costs of town meeting. It was close to 50, and we're going to be, north of that this year. So, but we also paid for a lot of it out of COVID last year, out of our CARES funding. Which
Can we do it this year?
We don't have any more. Unless we get new funding, we'll have to use the reserve fund.
All right.
Okay. All right. Anything else administratively from the rest of the committee? And if not, we'll.
Oh, yeah, one thing. I need to revise the minutes a little bit. So I will revise them and I will send them back out to you this week.
Okay. And then we'll do that.
Next week we can do both because we also have the notes from the 9th.
Exactly. So we can
do them both next
we
week.
can do them both next week, right?
Perfect.
Barbara,
Okay.
thank you for taking them.
Yes,
Oh.
thank you very much.
Well,
And
Thank you,
Julie too.
As always.
Oh my gosh, Julie's a gift.
Thank you.
All right, public forum? Comments from the two remaining, Emily and Austin?
I have nothing. Thank you, guys.
All right, well then, I think a motion to adjourn is in order.
So move.
Second,
Second,
All in favor?
aye, Beatty.
Vanderslice, aye.
Hold your eye.
Aye.
Right.
We'll
Yeah,
take
aye.
Bill's yellow thumbs up as an aye.
Zahora, I.
Tarmy, aye.
All right, then we are adjourned.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Tony and
Good
Allison.
night.
too.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Bob,
Nice
are
meeting you,
you
Zach.
gonna- Bob, are you gonna send us new links? Or is there one place where I missed where all of them were?
It's the same link. Every meeting is the same link. So that
So I
link
just
that I,
go way back and it's always gonna be the same link.
well, the link that I sent you will always be the same link.
Okay, I'll just put a star by it. Okay,
Yeah,
Thanks a
so
lot.
find the Zoom link and it will be that most recent Zoom link every time.
got it. Thanks a lot.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah,
John Fulgham,
Yes.
is there a link to last year's town
Let-
warrant thing on the cloud?
you're saying like the final book?
Yeah,
I'm good.
yeah.
I don't know. I bet I can
I'm-
find one. Yeah, I don't know if
I'm
I,
pretty
yeah.
sure there is.
I'll,
It may be hard to find buried in the town's website, but I'm pretty sure there is.
I'll make a note, DeWitt, and I'll look for it.
Thank you very much.
Or if not, I'll send you a Word version. Do you just want it for reference in general, or do you?
It would be better if I could just go to the cloud.
Okay,
It'd be easier on you and everybody.
okay, I'll try to find that path.
But I have no idea of how to find it anyway,
Okay, I'll look for that.
Merging PDFs, you lost me when you started to say
Yeah,
merge.
well, I didn't know much about it until last year either.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
was
God.
gonna ask that too. I'm not familiar. You said
Holy mackerel.
PDF organizer. So
There's there's a thing called PDF Expert. I had to download a new app / module because I couldn't combine PDFs with the things that I had. So I had to-
PDF Mafia, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Bye.
All right. See ya.
All right. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Bob. Yeah. Good
Thank
night.
you. Have a good night.